Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Sell More Book Show, episode 570. I'm Brian Cohen from Best Page Forward, joined by Theodora Taylor from Seven Figure Fiction. Theodora, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course, of course. We're really happy you're here. We had a lot of fun discussions last week, and one of the things we talked about was this living with your family being there in the midst of your writing. How do you feel like, what do you think was the best thing you did to train your kids and your husband not to come in when you are writing the challenging scenes?
This isn't something that applies to other writers. I was just very mean about it.
Ah,
Like, like I that mom eye flare, like it's like,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
uh, like get out,
Sometimes,
get
hey,
out, skedaddle, skedaddle.
when you have superpowers, Theodora, you're allowed to use them. You're allowed to use them.
Yes, it's not therapist approved, but
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah,
it's
no.
basically just very much hard setting that line. Like, no. No.
Yeah.
Is this an emergency? No. So,
Yeah, I know a lot of people who go way too far on the other side and they're like, "Please don't." But then they're like their kids are in there all day and it's like
yes,
that's just not going to work.
yes,
So
yes.
I'd prefer the hard line.
Spectrum, like.
I'd prefer the hard line. For sure. For sure.
Well, it's funny. I'm a Midwestern, raised by like Southern parents, so I always tell my
Mhm.
kids, like, this is the nicest you're going to get from me. Like, there are certain things where just be like, no, don't do it. Like, I'm
That's
not going.
awesome.
I try to be kind and considerate. I try to take your feelings into account, but like, don't interrupt me. I just
Yep.
cannot bear being pulled out of focus, so don't do it.
That's awesome. That's helpful to know how you did it. It's helpful to know. Um let's get into the fun here. I just want to let everybody know the ad challenge is coming back, so stay tuned. If you're subscribed to me, if you're in places, you'll find out that it's changed a little bit, but we're excited to have it out there soon. So go keep an eye out in your inbox because everyone keeps asking me about it. So it's coming. Don't worry about it. Let's get into the previous week's question, which is, what is a problem you're facing that you already know the solution to? Yep, right. I love that size so much, Theodora.
That's a great question.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Bethany
Great
Tucker
question.
said, building newsletter subscribers. I know so many things to do, but allocating the time for it while meeting my writing deadlines just isn't happening. I've put a little extra time in my schedule for this late spring after I meet my deadlines with my editor. Good work, Bethany. And then Anne Marie Aber said, recording my audiobooks for nonfiction. I bought the tools to do it 2 years ago, but I'm too scared or overwhelmed or
Yeah.
something to get it done. 30 seconds of courage, Anne Marie, just on hitting the button to record. Get all set up. That isn't scary. Get all set up. Get your blanket wherever you need to be. But then just save the courage for when you push the record button. That is my recommendation.
Also, if you know anyone in real life, a friend or a spouse or anybody, have them produce it.
Yep.
Then they just come through, and the way, like, I won't do stuff like that for myself, but if my husband shows up and it's just like, hey, you said today we're going to produce this, it's just like,
Yep.
well, I guess I'm gonna have to overcome my fear and do that.
Yeah.
So
There's nothing like social pressure.
yes, that
There's
social
nothing
pressure is
like social
amazing.
pressure. I love that. And then Dharma Kelleher said, I recorded my first audiobook last year. Super nervous when I started, made lots of mistakes, but gradually improved and enjoyed it by the end. Yeah, sometimes you just have to push through.
Yes.
Sometimes you just have to push through.
Oh, there is a term in like psychology about getting through the hard bit of, what is it called? When you don't know what you're doing and you have to figure it out and you're just bad at it for a moment. But then, the more you practice, the better you become. So that moment and pushing through it is is really important. So I'm
Oh,
glad you were able to do that.
100%. So good job, Dharma. Y'all can answer the question of the week at Sell More Book Show After Party Facebook group. Let's go into the top story, swag bag. Quote, authors aren't just selling books anymore, they're selling an experience, says the Ally team on selfpublishingadvice.org. Whether it's special edition hardcovers, themed merchandise, or full-scale print businesses, more are turning to physical products to supplement their income and engage readers in new ways, end quote. Until recently, merchandise was expensive and had to be ordered in bulk, but that's changing because of new products and features being added by print on demand services. Short runs make direct to reader sales and Kickstarter sales accessible to more authors. Quote, merchandise isn't just an add on, says Ally's Melissa Addy, who also writes historical fiction. It's a strategic tool that can enhance an author's brand, attract new readers, and strengthen existing relationships, end quote. But, she says, it needs to serve a purpose. For most, it's about building a deeper connection with readers. But even then, it needs to be cost effective. It needs to either bring in income, add credibility, increase readership, improve visibility, or enhance the reader experience. The best products check multiple boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Addie encourages authors to think beyond the obvious bookmarks and tote bags and create products that tie directly into their books. Quote, the best merchandise isn't just extra, it enhances the book's world and deepens the reader's experience, end quote. Addie, whose historical fiction is set in medieval Morocco, had hand-illustrated drawings created from Berber jewelry designs and used Redbubble to produce dresses,
Oh, wow.
cushions, and other items featuring the designs. Thinking about adding merchandise to your book business? Start small, see what works. Print-on-demand services like Redbubble and Zazzle allow authors to upload designs, put them on a variety of products, with the service doing the printing and shipping for you. A great way to test the waters without taking on a financial risk. For more examples, plus advice on what to do and what not to do, visit the link in our show notes. So here's a question, Theodora. Do you think your fiction readers would be more likely to buy merch from you, or your authors who love seven-figure fiction
Oh,
would be more
oh,
likely?
oh, so I'm about to find out. I'm about
Ooh,
to
okay.
find
Tell
out.
me
Yes.
more. Tell me more.
So it occurred to me that, because a lot of people were saying to me, oh, when I'm writing, I like to think about, oh, butter. I just, you know, like I imagine butter on the keyboard, or I imagine
Uh-huh.
butter this way. I was like, oh, it would be nice if I could like have a T-shirt or a
Mm-hmm.
candle, like a butter
Mm-hmm.
candle,
Mm-hmm.
or I almost wore them today, but I decided to go with my heart lollipops instead. But or butter earrings or something like that
Yep.
that would remind people as they're writing, hey, I'm a butter writer. I am thinking about my audience, pretending it's a butter earring, the butter earrings I did not wear. And, you know, so hopefully writers respond to that, because that's how I would. I get um, candles for all sorts of things. You can't see my bookshelf
Yeah.
from this angle, but I get candles for all sorts of things. So I love the idea of a butter candle. I love the idea of something wearable that just reminds
Yeah.
you, hey, your audience, your audience, your audience.
I really like the idea of the butter earrings. I think that
Yeah.
would be super cute. Um, what creative merchandise have you seen authors use to build their businesses?
Oh, I've seen so many cute things. I've seen so many cute things. So one that I just really, really love, especially for like a Patreon tier, is the new release box, where it's just
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, it's something, it's not, it's kind of what you were talking about with swag bags. It's not just the book. It's not just a physical version of the book, but it's also, something that goes along with the book that's special
Yep.
to the book. And I love things like the things that I've seen that I really, really love are, this is kind of silly, but a sticker of the actual book for people to use in their journals. So
Oh, I love that.
for those of us who are like ridiculously book girly, and especially if you read a lot on Kindle, I love the idea of just having for my book journal, where I can just put a sticker in of that book. Like, yeah, I read that. And when I go back and look through the book journal and think about what I thought about that, it just looks so much prettier than just having a regular old book journal. Also, you can put it in anything. You can put it in your bullet journal. You can put it in your diary. So I love a sticker of just the book cover. And then I also love a tea. Like if you want to tempt me to buy your book box, like say there's a special tea that goes along with it. I got
Ah.
Target was doing this for Bridgerton, where they had like a special tea and a little cozy pillow and stuff like that. And the way I wanted to get everything. So I love
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. So if
I
you
love
can
that.
think of, and the other thing that I love is when people put the products in the book. So if there is like, so say your person runs like a coffee house or something like
Yep.
that. And then you can get a coffee on demand and say, oh, my small town barista who fell in love with the guy who turned out to be a rock star in disguise. I love those kind of novels.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the coffee that she serves, the magical coffee that everybody loves at her shop. And have a little special love.
Mm-hmm.
So I love things like that makes you feel like not only did I read this book, but I'm inside the book as I'm reading it.
That's really cool. I mean, that's where in this article they talk about it being like enhancing the experience. That's
Exactly.
where it really feels like it's enhancing the experience. You have a question in here for me.
I
Those hot
do, I
potatoes.
do. So what are some of the biggest mistakes that you're seeing authors make with physical products when it comes to this?
Look, I've seen people do incredible things with the physical products. I think one of my favorite people is Pierre Alex Gentil, who sells his poetry from his website and teaches folks on Shopify and has the candles and the notebooks and all these wonderful things. But I think we need to not go down the rabbit hole because it's so fun to put your Zazzle or Redbubble images on everything and have 100 products. But having one thing first and trying it out is not easy for some people at some personality types, but it's really important because if you go too deep and you have too much, people do not like having too much choice.
Oh, that's true. That's
People
true.
like having it very, very simple. And so simple when it comes to deciding on what you're going to get here, simple is better.
Yes. That's often why I don't get things or swag,
Mm-hmm.
or it's just like, what should I get? Should I get this? Or should I get this? Or should I get this? So when it's limited, it's like, this is all you can get. I'm much more likely to get it. Or if it's one of two, maybe three, but if it gets much more than
If it
that,
gets to be too much,
yeah,
yeah, your brain just short circuits and then you're
yeah.
like, nope, no thank you. Yeah. We've got another lightning round coming, so Theodore, if you want to switch it up, you want to try something different, now's the time for a second
Oh, I
lightning
forgot
sound.
about this. Oh, it's like, yeah.
This is hesitant lightning.
It's like, oh, God, like, lightning.
Oh, I love it. I think that's good. I thought that was good. I'm proud of you for finding your inspiration.
More enthusiasm.
Yeah, no notes. There are no notes. Theodora, I know you talk about this a lot on your Substack. How does the butter of universal fantasy fit into book descriptions?
It's in my opinion, it's the most important because I always say, as someone who like, I'm always just kind of like mercurial about my covers. I'm like, oh, let's try this. I think it's cute. And I just can't bring myself to A/B test it, see if
Mm-hmm.
anybody else thinks it's cute, or even see if it's working. I'm like, oh, your blurb will save you. Your blurb will
Mm-hmm.
save you. Um, if your cover isn't on point, then your blurb will come through. If your marketing's not on point, it will come through. It's really important, and I talk about this in my big course, when you get something, in my opinion, like a book club. Like that's
Yep.
when you want to like
Yep.
look at your old book descriptions and be like, okay, when I first wrote this book description, it was for probably a very warm audience, especially if it's like a sequel or something like that, or a
Right.
spin-off
Right.
series. And they were looking for this book. Now, if I was rewriting this for a cold audience who doesn't know me, never heard of me, but wants to buy this book because they can get it for 99 cents or free, how do I attract those clicks? How do I attract just any old body? And the way you do that is using like a universal fantasy, which is basically, when we're talking beyond trope, the reason or reasons anybody will enjoy your book. So just making sure that's in your blurb, making sure that's obvious, that for the people who enjoy when a big city girl falls for a lumberjack, that
Yep.
both lumberjack and big city girl are in your
Mm-hmm.
book. Or this is something that's come up in my blurb salon. I do salons where we just
Mm-hmm.
look at
Mm-hmm.
blurbs, and one of the things that's come up a couple of times is people will have a hero, and they'll be like, "Oh, I met him in France," or "I met him in Scotland," da da da. And they won't mention that he has like a sexy accent. It's just kind of like, mention the accent. That's
Mention
the
the
reason
accent.
people are going to enjoy this book. So just really making sure that, not all the reasons, but at least a few of the reasons that people are going to enjoy this book are in your book's description, and that it's specific. Like it's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's the billionaire beast, not the not the orc beast in this. So
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
think.
no, that's great. That's great. You got a question here for me about blurbs.
So where do most authors get caught up when they're trying to write their own blurbs, do you think?
I think you and I agree on this. They try to include every story detail, and usually in a run-on sentence.
Yes.
Usually in a run-on sentence, they're like, no, this is a series sentence where we have one sentence, comma, basically another whole sentence, comma, another whole sentence, which is all like separate plot points, none of which are trope related, none of which are
Yes.
necessarily universal fantasy related. And so I have rules for blurbs that I suggest no more than one punctuation mark per a sentence in a blurb. So if you just one comma, one comma, one M dash, that's it. That's all you get.
Yes, yes.
And that usually helps people settle down. But like, look, have an inciting incident, have a couple of tropes that you
Right.
mention, have a cliffhanger, get out.
Yes,
You do
yes.
not need to include all the details.
Yes, yes. No, like, they'll get the details when they get there. Just include the
Yeah,
good
the
stuff.
basics. The basics. I have a question for you. So universal fantasy, the butter, it applies to books, it applies to the blurbs, but do you feel like they apply to other types of book marketing as well?
I've been told by my students that they use it for reels a lot, a lot.
Ooh,
Because
uh-huh.
you want to know what's attractive about your character. You want to know what universal fantasy setups will make for a good blurb. And I see it out in the wild all the time. It's just like, oh, when you go to the castle to get your father, and he says he can leave, but you can't. That's a universal fantasy,
Oh yeah.
stuff like that. So once you identify your universal fantasies for your book, and when I teach courses, it's usually like all sorts of interesting ways to try to identify the butter and the universal fantasy in your book. Once you identify that, you can do a lot of great things with it. Like you can literally make a list of your universal fantasies and then just write your reels, your posts to that.
Oh yeah. And I've seen those kind of
Yeah,
reels. I've seen them on Instagram. I've seen them all over. So absolutely. Great call. You got a question for me?
I do. So, what creative book marketing methods have you seen recently? I'm always looking to see like what
Oh
are
yeah.
people doing?
So here's my favorite of what I've seen lately. Let's say you have something that works well organically. Um, let's say it's a reel or a
Hmm.
TikTok. Let's say it's a you've had luck with BookFunnel or Story Origin promos to grow your email list. Let's say it's just, some post you put out on Facebook, whatever. Organic growth and organic success and organic things that are building your business, super great.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Use those. The best thing I've seen lately, the most creative thing I've seen lately is just throw an ad to what's already working.
Yes, yes.
Throw an ad to that reel that's already working. Throw an ad. I've seen people, this is like one of my coaching students taught me this. And so I was just amazed. BookFunnel and Story Origin, it's like all about when you're getting accepted for promos and whatnot, like what's your click through rate? What's your whatever? I've seen people run an ad to the BookFunnel promo from their link so that their click through rate goes up so that other people want to accept them for promos. I'm like,
Wow.
mind blown, right?
Wow.
And it's all just throwing an ad to what's already working organically in order. And I've done this for years, not even like thinking, oh, this is not something everybody does. If something works for me, I'm like, money. I throw money at the problem. And it tends to work. It tends to
Mhm.
work really well. And being conscious of these things, being conscious of this post did something and this post didn't, helps you to identify what are the things I should try to duplicate rather than just trying to come up with it from scratch every single time.
Oh, nice. So when exactly do you do this? Do you do this formally where you're like, okay, I'm going to look at all of my efforts for the
Mm.
month, and
Hmm.
then I'm going to decide how to apply that to next month? Or is it just something you keep in your mind as you're going along?
Well, I definitely I post regularly on social media, and right now I'm not posting, but posting every day, which
I know.
means I'm reusing content from
Yeah.
last year. And I will see, oh, this post got, 50 likes. This post did well. And then I say, okay, well, I'll file that in the back of my head and say, if I'm going to do an ad on this, this is what I'm going to use.
Mm,
And so it's really more like it's an ever present thing, but then I file away kind of opportunities.
mm,
Like I had a post, I had asked for a review from LJ Andrews, who has worked with our author ad agency. When you were talking about reels that use the universal fantasy, I was thinking of hers.
mm,
Um, and this great quote she had of, I just hit $2 million for the year. I'm so appreciative of you and Quinn's help with the agency. And I was like, okay, that's a great quote. I'm going to
absolutely.
save that up.
Yeah.
And now I've used it in a Facebook ad. I've used it in an ad that I've been sponsoring some signing events lately. And so I've been using it in like the emails that they send out for that. I was just like, okay, I've got something. Now when the opportunity arises, I'm going to use it. And so like but not being willing to just say, I'm going to push the candy button over and over again. If
Hmm.
this worked once, why not do it 100 times?
No, I love that. And I love that you're kind of always thinking like, oh, this is great. Like the spark is like, oh, you felt great when
Yep.
you were just like, I
Yep.
love this person. I want to help more people. I'll show this. This is a great advertisement for what I do. Like, I would think with authors, when a lot of us get, just really lovely, gushing comments on
Mhm.
Instagram or, emails and stuff like that.
Yep. Yep.
So when someone like leaves you an Instagram comment, that's like, oh my God, I love this book. It doesn't always have to be a 5-star review from Amazon.
Yeah.
It could be that Instagram comment that you run an add-on or something like that, because you want more people to, especially if you can get people to say, "Oh yeah, I love that book too," on your ad as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Reusing those things means you don't have to come up with them all on your own, which is
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Which
It's
is
like
nice.
always be looking for your ad materials, your
Mm-hmm.
marketing materials.
Oh, 100%. Last question of the lightning round. So, this is kind of a biggie, but when you're trying to find a genre to write in that can, look, sell more copies than the one you're writing in currently, how do you make sure it fits what you like to write and what readers will want to read? That Venn
Um,
diagram there.
I don't. It's just so that's what's interesting about being a genre hopper, and
Yep.
especially mercurial as I am. Like sometimes it's just like I'm just going to write about bear shifters, and it doesn't make as much as my contemporary. And
Mhm.
then sometimes I'm going to write about contemporary, and that makes way more. But I feel, and this is very very personal to me because I just don't have that great of attention span. I just
Mhm.
can't. I just can't. It's a really good idea too, and
Mhm.
I just
Mhm.
can't. So what I really, really have noticed though through the years is even if something doesn't make as much money upon release,
Yeah.
there's a long tail to things. For example, I did these alien romances with a co-writer, and I barely support them. And they just kind of are perennial favorites. People
Mhm.
just tend to like them, and there's always a new alien romance audience coming through. And so I wouldn't have pegged those as, oh, they're going to make a lot of money for me because it was just kind of a thought experiment. But it did. So I believe very greatly in having a diversified catalog. That way, you never know what's going to hit. And, for example, this is a long time ago when Harry and Meghan Markle got married. I happened to have a princess theme. Hey, I can use this. So what I really love to do is kind of what you do with your marketing method.
Yeah. Yeah.
For example, if one of my best campaigns of last year was for Father's Day. I was like, oh, Father's Day is coming up. What can I do? What do I have that has to do with Father's Day? And I ran and I ran an ad to it, and I was just like a bundle of all the heroes who found out that they had a reason to celebrate Father's Day. Is like surprise secret baby bundle.
Yep.
So it's just
Yep.
kind of like, well, what can you do with that backlist? And then if I'm half wide, half KU, but Apple and whoever will send around a promo and they'll say, hey, we're doing Wolf versus Vampire Week. And it's like, oh, I have a wolf book. And they're like, hey, we're doing Bossy Billionaire Week. It's like, I have a billionaire. So,
Yep.
I always say, if you want to write to market, um, and you have the constitution for it, go for it. But if you don't, just really enjoy what you're doing presently and realize that that all becomes backlist. And in my opinion, your backlist is more important than your front list because your backlist
Mm.
is what's paying your dividends. There's what's paying your royalties. So it's just kind of like, what can I be doing with my backlist? Or if you're like me, sometimes you write about something and it doesn't become popular for a few years. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, that flopped. But then it's just like, orcs are popular. I never wrote about orcs, but there are people who wrote about orcs before orcs became as popular as they are now.
Right. Right.
It's like
Right.
repackage those orcs, like do it
Yeah.
now. I wrote a book for Harlequin that was called like 10 Days and 10 Nights in Paris, and it was like a story, a novella that I wrote, and it did okay.
Yeah.
And I got the rights back, after Emily in Paris had come out, and I repackaged it as Kayla in Paris, and it did great. It was just kind
Yeah.
of like, oh, now there's a show that has, that's set in Paris. People love the idea of a romance in Paris. Let's do Kayla in Paris. And then when the new series of Emily in Paris came out, I was just kind of like, oh hey, 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 hey. Are you looking for something else? I have this Kayla in Paris thing. And so, I would always say, um, for me personally, I really hesitate to ever give advice that is purely prescriptive for a large
Right,
group of
right.
people. But if you don't like writing to genre, like just think about, okay, what do I have in my backlist that I can use now? Like, how can I make my backlist count now?
Yeah, yeah. Love it. Love it. We need a question of the week here. Another one. I know. I know. Um, we've talked about kind of a lot about marketing methods. We've talked about the merch and the physical products. Is there a second thing that you want to know, Theodora? Is there a second thing you want to know as far as what our listeners might be wondering or thinking or
I wonder.
mm, if you can't put it fully into words, I can help.
Like, I will help you get there.
I am here.
Um, I really loved um, our talk about creative book marketing methods
Yeah,
and
yeah.
how we've kind of discovered them along the way. I wonder what creative book marketing, what was your best creative book marketing idea, or what
Mm,
worked for you creative book marketing wise?
yeah,
So for me, like I said, I had that like, hey, um, Father's Day secret baby bundle
yeah,
sale. What was the thing that's worked for you recently that's been a creative book marketing method that kind of came to you, like an inspired creative book
yeah.
marketing
I love
method? I
it.
hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, what are some of the most inspired creative book marketing ideas that have worked for you?
Yes.
Love it. Y'all, you can answer the question of the week over at sellmorebookshow.com or the Sell More Book Show After Party Facebook group. If you want to learn about universal fantasy and having the butter in your books, go to 7 the number figurefiction.com. Theodora, it has been such a delight to have you these 2 weeks. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. This was so much fun. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
good. Of course. Happy to have you. Folks, we're not done. We're almost at, I think, 11 years or so of this show. So we're going to keep the party rolling with another wonderful guest co host next week. So for Theodora, I'm Brian. Have a great week of book selling, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye, everyone.